there's quite a lot to cover today. So but welcome. Thanks for taking the time. This topic has got a lot of interested comments on LinkedIn, and if you're following us on LinkedIn or via our newsletter, this has been a topic that's probably been one of the most successful for the year. So I'm really looking forward to getting into this. Welcome to the masterclass. Those of you who know us will already know the format, but just to make you aware, if you follow us on LinkedIn already, we do live events which are more futuristic thinking. We normally get guests and we do it live. This is more of a masterclass where we talk about practical applications of some of the latest thinking that Claudia and I have seen across our client groups, and some of the kind of key challenges that you might be facing. I'd also encourage you to look at our newsletter on the website, because we also are launching things like roundtable events and in-person events like the one that we hosted recently at Tower Bridge, which was amazing. Claudia, that was a brilliant event. Thank you for involving me in that. But yeah, what are we covering today, Claudia? What are we seeing?
Well, I think change has been a bit of a topic. We recently did our in-person event in London on, how to manage change from a psychological flexibility lens. So we are diving in today into, how can we actually stay motivated, grounded, and energized through constant change. We've got a lot going on in the world. There's, lots of disruption with AI. We have lots of restructures, and also just general global economic issues attacking lots of different businesses at the moment. So all of this is going to take its psychological toll on people. So we want to be able to provide the practical skills and tools to be able to help manage and motivate you throughout change. So that's what we're going to be running through today.
Brilliant. And just as quick introductions to us, if you don't know us already, my name is Anthony. I'm a client account director here at Bailey & French. Last 10 years or so, I've been applying positive psychology and human-centered kind of leadership approaches to culture, change, those types of things. So this is a topic that's really energizing for me. And Claudia, you're even doing your kind of studies on this at the moment, so it's a really relevant topic for you too.
Absolutely, yes. I'm also a client account director as well, running quite a lot of our private accounts on a global scale at Bailey & French, and I'm currently in the midst of doing my master's in organisational psychology, of which I'm currently actually doing my research project all around understanding motivation based on future outlook and how that affects engagement at work and motivation at work. So my whole research project is around this topic. So something that I am really keen to get into. So should we get a little bit more into it?
Yeah, let's do it. And this was just a little bit of a teaser into this topic. We all know that change is happening. Change is the topic of everyone's kind of agenda. But something that really struck me was when I looked at, pre-2020, people were experiencing roughly 2 changes per year. That wasn't significant changes. That was just changes in work, maybe a restructure, maybe there was a new product launched, etc. Now we're facing 9. And actually, when you look deeper into this research, it is really interesting. But you're not only facing 9 fairly significant changes, you're facing 3 very significant life or work changes overall. And I thought that was a really good place to start, alongside Gallup's new stuff, which was saying that only 20% of people trust their leadership, because those 2 things together, I think, is what's creating a lot of it. And when we talk about root cause, this is, I think, the crux of everything. So I thought we could probably start here, Claudia.
Absolutely. And now we're really keen to just hear a little bit from you directly. And understand the impact of all the changes that you're actually dealing with at the moment. So we're going to go to our first poll. And our first question is around how many changes are you dealing with right now? Does that kind of resonate what those stats that Ant just kind of mentioned there? Are you dealing with a lot? Are you not so many? Is it fairly calm? Are you feeling the pressure? Is it chaotic? Please tell us, because we'd love to know. And then secondly, the second question is all around, are you trusting your leaders to lead that change effectively as well? Okay, let's have a look. 43 responses. We're getting good responses in. Keep them coming, keep them rolling in. That's it. Okay, so people are definitely feeling the pressure. So 4 to 5 is currently our highest amount of changes right now. So that's quite significant, to be honest, and is probably in line with just above or just below where with the stat that Ant just mentioned there. We've got some dealing with chaos, plus 31%. Or they're still coming in, they're still rolling in. So it seems pretty significant then. So hopefully we are well equipped to help support you in these kinds of change at the moment. Okay, brilliant.
That's really interesting to see right in the middle, isn't it? So it's not quite 9. And I wonder whether, post-pandemic, where we were changing so much about the way that we worked, we're still changing a lot, but maybe it's becoming flatter. Don't know. It's interesting.
Totally. So, look, I think it's really critical to talk about, when our leaders don't get change right, it has a huge impact on engagement, things like performance, decision making, and also the ability to really remain agile. So with leaders facing obviously like a 2.5% increase in critical decisions per week, this is sort of leading to issues around confidence around those decisions. And, that's creating a real impact on the wider organization, on them reaching goals and things like that. So it's quite critical that we get this right. And even according to Gartner, so we've got employees experiencing change fatigue report. They reported 42% were less intent to stay with their employer through times of change, 30% lower levels of trust, 22% less discretionary effort, and 22% less sustainable performance. So this really just goes to show that, if you don't get this right and you don't understand performance motivation related to change, then you could be losing staff and having just generally really negative outputs from your organization. So it's really important that we really flip this and change this to ensure that people stay engaged.
It's really important, and what I love building on that is that even the high performers, it seems, are really struggling. So almost a 20-30%, according to Deloitte, and we'll share with you some of the links so you can see some of this for yourself, but 20 to 30% reduction in performance due to kind of an ambiguous objective that they can't push to, or a misalignment or a miscommunication. So this is costing around about £2,000 to £15,000. That's British pounds per employee annually. There's one for the US folks who I know have just joined. So like for a person, 1,000-person firm, you're looking at about £3 million a year, and that's just in misalignment, miscommunication. If you missed our one on communication from last time, do check out the YouTube and have a look, because there was some really useful tools and tricks that we won't cover in this. But what I think is important to bring that to life, that sounds like a lot, but it's also difficult to put into context, right? But if McKinsey are also saying that about 70% of your programs that you're trying to make a change and make a difference into your organization, 70% of them are failing just because of the things that we're going to talk about on this masterclass. I think that kind of brings the picture into where we're moving next. And certainly when we look at where this is landing and some of the stories that are out there in the media, I've just highlighted a few. And of course, some of you who are from these organizations are on this masterclass as well. It's interesting to hear your thoughts as we go through. But what we're seeing is people not moving fast enough. So things like cybersecurity catching up. We've heard about M&S, but more recently Monzo as well. We've got Duolingo, where the exec team's just not being quite smart enough on their communication around AI and how they're making that shift happen. So not factoring in some of these really critical, fundamental human motivation principles into their decision making right from the top. But equally, we've got some that are doing it really well, and Burberry have printed a really nice story that I can share afterwards. But it's around when you get this right, the impact, not just at the top and not just on middle managers, but those experiencing in stores was their example. People kind of better experience, better loyalty, but also just more friendly to staff, and they're seeing almost a reciprocation of that human connection with their team. So it was really, really interesting. And of course, people like EasyJet at this time of year in particular, navigating those kind of strikes and difficulties of the market being so busy. Getting it right is a high pressure environment, and we do see almost people rushing and doing this stuff too quickly. It's too critical, it's too pacey, and people are therefore creating disengagement, confusion, and disruption because of that. It needs to be quick, it needs to be now, and they don't have simple frameworks to guide them along the way. Leadership teams don't have the space to think about these things and think about it in a structured way. They're just making quick decisions, which is understandable. We're all being tight on budgets. But if you can see that your people are maybe complying, but they're not fully committing, or people are just being a bit standoffish and you're having to put more and more policy and practice in place, that could be a symptom that you're not quite getting it right. So these were all the things that we wanted to touch on, I suppose, Claudia, today.
Exactly. So I think one question that we really like to ask you is try and think of an example where you have actually thrived through change. So we're really keen just to hear from you where you can draw upon some experiences where you've built resilience through a workplace change and actually you've come out the other side and thought, actually, yeah, this is fine. We can handle the change that's coming through. So, and have you got any examples that you can think of to help give some examples for everyone?
I struggle with this one. If I'm totally honest, me and Claudia were talking about this just before, and this is a bit behind the scenes for you. I struggle with the concept of thriving through change, because if you think back to any change that you've been through, and I'd love to hear you put things in the chat as I'm waffling, but when I experience change, I don't know about you, but I find it really difficult. Right? I spend a third of my life at work. Therefore, I spend more time at work than I do with my loved ones. So when a significant change happens that maybe affects me, it's natural, I think, to have quite a negative reaction to change. And I can really understand and empathize, especially restructures and things in larger organizations. I'm not sure it's so possible to fully thrive, or I think we need to manage our expectations of what thriving looks like during times of change. And I think in the moment, it's chaos, and you can it's difficult. Maybe on reflection, though, you can reflect and find positive from it. But I know you potentially disagree with that.
I do a little bit. I actually think that, we've gone through multiple revolutions, like the Industrial Revolution. We've gone through the digital revolution with and also the move to AI now, which can definitely help improve workflows. And I think change is totally a catalyst to innovate. So you can identify new product lines, you can find new solutions to issues, you can identify better workflows of doing things. So I believe change can actually be really positive. And quite often people do really have resilience to go through change without, realizing. So I think in order for people to really thrive through change, we need 3 psychological conditions to be met. So firstly is psychological safety and autonomy. So people need to feel secure and have some control over or choice over what's going on. The second thing is around clarity of purpose and meaning. So people need to understand the why behind the change and how they fit into it themselves and how their individual contribution can fit into that change. And then thirdly, there's capacity for growth and support. So people need the tools, the time and support to adapt and develop through that change in order to perform and have that motivation to still perform. We've got a comment here from Sam as well saying, I wouldn't say I've felt like I've thrived through change in the moment. But looking back, you can see how much I've grown as a result of change. Thank you. See, that's what I was trying to get to. I love that. I was implementing our talent and learning academy. Brilliant. I love that. We've got Charlie here saying, I don't ever feel as though I thrive through change itself, learning to manage it better, and I'm much better at gaining perspective afterwards. That's exactly what psychological capital is all about, and I'm drawing on those personal experiences to know that actually you'll probably be fine at the end of it or throughout it, and just remembering that you have that resilience built up throughout your life from various different scenarios. One example that I think we were going to draw upon is, let's take the example of a company restructure, for example. A thriving scenario would be where the employees have been consulted early. They've then been invited to co-create new roles or new workflows or something like that, and actually given clarity on what will stay the same so that they know and they can anchor onto that. Having that clear communication is going to be really critical about what's changing and what isn't, and then support given to adjust and sort of grow into these new roles is going to be really supportive. So I think that's going to be critical. But why does that work? It works because it helps give people a sense of control, lowers hopefully anxiety, and managers can explain why it's being introduced and involve employees in setting their own goals and providing that consistent coaching to help them throughout that change. So once it's all met, then hopefully that can enable people to not just survive, but actually to grow within their organisations within that change. So, and how do we help people skip ahead? That's the question,
that's
isn't it?
the question. I think that's the question. It's really, thank you. You've almost all validated my thinking here, where I sort of feel in the moment you get stuck in the mud and you want to kind of grind through it and get through it and survive. You're not in thriving mode, but maybe in reflection you can figure out ways that you were in thriving mode. You just didn't realize it at the time. And I think, Claudia, that example is a perfect one right now with so much change and restructure going. And so I guess the question is, well, what do we do about it? What skills can we kind of not train people on necessarily, but educate and live and breathe throughout our organizations? What are the things that are most critical? There's so much research in this area. It's really easy to get lost when we talk about keeping people motivated through change. But I know you've done a lot of thinking on this and you've done the research. So tell us more.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier on, I'm actually doing my research project all around this topic. So really around, how does your motivation at work, how is it affected by your future outlook? So in essence, how change affects motivation and your engagement at work. So we can draw upon the self-determination theory. Some of you may or may not have heard of this, but ultimately it's all centered around people staying motivated when 3 psychological needs are met. So the first one, we kind of already touched on it a little bit earlier, is around autonomy. So it's like letting people choose how they do things within their role and really leaning into their strengths around how they can do their role to their best ability and having that control and ownership. The second is around competence. So really, we're really driven by when we feel capable, skilled, and actually able to make progress. And then the third is around relatedness. So feeling connected to others. So feeling a part of a team or purpose bigger than ourselves really helps to keep us engaged. So that's why communication is so critical in times of change, because you want to understand how you can have an impact as an individual, but also as a team, how it impacts everyone else and how you can work to your strengths to ensure that you're all working together to have the ultimate, I guess, the flow and goal that you need and that you're working towards throughout that times of change. So those are quite 3 critical things that are related to motivation at work. And I know that you've also got a couple of other things that you wanted to draw upon here around goal setting.
Yeah, because it's so right. Give people freedom, make them feel like they've got the skills to achieve what they want, and make them feel part of the team so that they don't feel alone. But I think there's something about creating that really clear and obvious path, which when things are so uncertain, it can be easy to get lost and you don't really know what the path is. Let's be honest, not every manager will. Maybe operationally, you've got good systems in place, but potentially that's the thing that you're changing. You're moving into a new system, you're adopting an AI agent alongside the current system. And I think if we need to get a lot better at aligning and communicating clearly the daily, weekly kind of goal and the clear path to achieving that in a way that's aligned to that person's values and strengths. For example, if someone was speaking to me, giving me a clear path is one thing, but saying, hey, and you need to focus on how you can do that in a strategic way or in collaboration with others, because that's where you get your energy. So I think making people be able to have these conversations to create those clear paths and checking it more regularly, because even monthly check-ins now are not going to work because things are potentially changing even more frequently. Doesn't mean that you need to rip things up every given moment, because of course that's going to have a negative impact on productivity. But just being able to, hey, are we still on the same path? Can I just check that the path is clear for you? Is there any blockers that's going to get in your way? Are you clear on how to move forward in your next steps? I think that goal theory is fundamental to the control piece that you've just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the final piece is all around, building that psychological capital, which we mentioned slightly earlier. Having that bank of experience to draw upon where you've been through a change before and actually, and you've got the confidence that actually you'll be fine. And also just draw upon maybe, think about when you've gone through that previously, have you been okay? And use that as mental fuel, I guess, that helps you to thrive through periods of change moving forward. So know that you've got this, basically. And then also, when you're leaning into your strengths, that's where you can sort of draw upon and build your resilience through that change to drive your motivation.
Yeah, it's an important one, isn't it? I remember that change didn't go so well, negativity spiral. I've now not got hope or optimism for the future. At what point does a manager or a leader notice that, jump in the way, stop that negative spiral as quickly as possible? I mean, that's a lot of self-awareness and other awareness and emotional intelligence generally to spot all of those things. And I think that gets into, well, what skills do people need? What do we need to be focusing on? If we were to create a psychological, motivation through change the next 6 months, how do we get control, path and hope as a core part of our strategy? Well, you need people to be able to spot when things are not quite aligned to this, and you need them asking good questions. People don't change their mind with statements, so you need people asking really great questions in a coaching way, looking forward with a strengths language. Otherwise, these conversations become a little bit more likely to be conflict or to be taken defensively. So I think, that strengths and positive psychology lens that Bailey and French bring, but obviously just generally as a appreciative inquiry approach to feedback and conversations, I think is really critical. We've now got great AI tools which you can lean on to go, hey, I just need a strengths question to help me and my team think about our resilience from the past. Those are great little check-in tools and little ways that people are using AI as an example to build on this. We do brilliant activities every Monday morning where we get people to think about their path and think about what they have autonomy over and what strengths they're going to lean into with each other. There's different little activities that you'll be able to do. And of course, whether you're on site or whether you're in the office or whether you're a remote team, there's some clear fundamentals. But I think people being able to lean into these three things are critical, whether you're a frontline leader, middle manager, or senior leader. What you do and what skills that you create at different levels is, of course, important. And I think if you were to build a strategy around this, you would need to be thinking about, well, how are my executive team showing up, giving people that autonomy, giving people a clear vision and path. But most of all, how are we making decisions maybe slightly slower, but more intentionally to make sure that we give people some element of resilience and strength moving forward? Not every organization has slow speed as a potential, especially public trading companies, right? Pace is what shareholders expect. But I think doing this more intentionally and going slower tends to speed things up. But yeah, what do you think, Claudia?
Totally. Well, I think startups as well. You've got to be very agile in startups, so you need to be able to be able to be adaptable to change when it's happening. So this is quite critical for those kind of environments. But I think we're going to go to our next poll and ask you specifically, do your people have the skills to manage change? Do your leaders have the skills to manage change? What do you think?
We've been doing too much talking. We now want to hear from you.
Yes, indeed. Although, is the poll coming up for you? Because it's not for me. Is it coming up for you?
Not coming up for me.
No.
But maybe just answer the question. I think it might have been in the previous. I think it might have been in the previous one, to be fair. But what did people respond to? I think it was kind of middle ground. We're maybe working on it, but we're not quite there yet. I think that was the about 45% or something. What I saw last time.
Oh, brilliant! Hold on a minute. Here we go. Results. Here we go. So we've got, do you trust your leaders to lead change effectively? We have mostly, but there are a few doubts, 52%.
There we go.
So there's clearly some, and they're not really, with 29% coming in at second. So clearly feels a little bit unclear or reactive. Okay, so we're going to draw upon some sort of more models to understand how we can actually introduce different mindsets. So, Ant, would you like to divulge a little bit more about psychological flexibility?
Yeah, well, this is one that's come up quite a lot. And over the next few months, you're going to probably start hearing a lot more about this and our model. And we've got some product launches around psychological flexibility specifically. Those of you who know us already, you'll know that we do a lot around psychological capital, flourishing, leading change generally, the management skills of having honest conversations, everything that we've just talked about. But psychological flexibility is obviously just another way of talking about a bit of a reimagining culture for the future. How do we get ourselves in the right mindset for change? Because it's continuous, it's going to get worse. Maybe this time next year, we're going to be facing into 12 changes, not 9 or not 4 or 5. And maybe those changes, like, for example, AI coming in, are going to be more significant to others than ever before. So, how do we almost get okay with the chaos? How do we have the flexibility in the moment to still spot the things that work really well? It's like in a busy street where everything's rushing at you really quickly, and you'll still have the calmness and capability to look up, look around, spot things, look at the beautiful building, appreciate where you are. Those types of skills. And most importantly, how do we tap into reducing negativity bias and learned helplessness, which fundamentally are the things that are stopping your people from wanting to change in the first place, right? I don't want to change because it will be a bad thing. We've been here before and it didn't work. Those are the two things that you hear time and time again. So yeah, this is a great kind of image around that, because you don't know what's around the corner. You maybe can't see over the hedge, so you can't see that clear path. So what are you as managers doing? It's an interesting one, Claudia.
Absolutely. So psychological flexibility draws upon five elements, and it really is kind of flipped the usual model for change on its head and the change curves that we're kind of used to seeing. And it starts around acceptance, so acknowledging the emotions that you feel about that change without any judgment, instead of sort of resisting that discomfort that we feel, actually acknowledging it without letting it dictate your actions. Then the second is around cognitive diffusion, so that's about distancing from your thoughts. So distancing from those negative thoughts without letting it define who we are. The third is around present moment awareness, so focusing on the here and now, not the future, rather than worrying about what could go wrong or regretting decisions that we've made, but actually staying focused on what you can control and the next step forward. Then the fourth is around values clarification, so knowing what really matters most to us and anchoring on that. So when you're facing change, what do we really care about? Really align into your values and knowing what your core beliefs are. And then finally, it's around committed action. So taking a step towards what matters, even when we're feeling a bit anxious. What is kind of the small, meaningful step that we are taking towards the outcome that we want? So these are kind of the 5 elements that encompass psychological flexibility. And we've got workshops that we cover on this to support and build resilience across teams, across levels. We've rolled this out with companies like Allianz on a global scale across EMEA, APAC, and the US. We've done it with Ocado as well. So we've done some really good work with where teams are dealing with constant change on psychological flexibility. So, fine. How can we help? So, Bailey & French, if you haven't, or if you're not already aware, we've got various solutions really focused around helping you through change. Mainly as a starting point, we use our conversation match, which you can see an image of here. And then from there, we also do skill development workshops and coaching to support your workforce to help them perform better and feel happier at work and support their well-being. So our starting point, as I said, it's obviously with the conversation maps. We can do it with all populations of organisations to help facilitate that open, honest conversation about the change that you're kind of currently undertaking, but also doing it with a lens around how we create the conditions for change, how to ensure we facilitate strong performance and empower individuals to have a voice within that change. And then finally, I think we also do, our in-person sessions are always the first step to gather that data, inform people of where they're at on their change journey, and also create steps to make the process smoother to ensure that peak performance. And then from there, we have the modular sprints for our skill development pathways, and then also ongoing team and one-to-one coaching and action learning sets to really help facilitate and support people to ensure that we have, you're not suffering from that churn. You're not having people get really concerned or create a negative culture. We really want to help avoid that, and we give you practical tools and skill development workshops across all levels to ensure that we mitigate that.
Yeah, it's a really it's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because if I'm sat in your shoes, folks on the call, and I'm NHS, I'm civil service, I'm private sector organisations, and you were very right to call me out. It's not just about pace that private sector organisations care about. It is one of them, of course, but you're absolutely right. There's a million and one things that they care about. But what we are seeing is people just still aren't making space to have these conversations. And one of the things that we've really noticed is going back to basics a little bit. Let's just get people in a room and have these semi-structured conversations about some of these key topics. When I'll be really honest, I joined Bailey and French nearly 5 years ago, actually. Time's flown. And I think I put this on LinkedIn recently because I looked at the mats and the products and I went, oh, we've got to be doing more. We've got to be innovating. We've got to be, and quite rightly, they went, just trust us, this works. And you would not believe the level of design capability that's gone into forming these questions and giving the right time to this, and the data analytics that you can get from just these open conversations has been really cool. So what we would normally do as an example is if your exec and your senior leadership group got together either as one or individually, we could then map out, praise, respect, people's ability to feel that control and that pace and that the clear pathway. We can have all of these conversations in a semi-structured, safe way. And the level of interaction and then kind of mobilizing that goodwill and that good faith into some quick wins that make the change, whatever change you're looking at. We've looked at things like sustainability even. How are we changing the way that we do things to make sure that people are more sustainable? And that was obviously a key comment that's just come up as well. But loads of different ways, digital transformation, different changes, restructures that are going on in the organization often stem back to, let's just have a really good conversation about human leadership and about our natural human motivation when it comes to change. Let's really discuss praise and how we're going to be, like, what's our praise strategy moving forward as an exec team, and how are we role modeling and turning up in these meetings or in public events, right? That's your chance to be visible. So it's really interesting how these mats, for me, just immediately my mind, and I've seen a number of these now, it's really about the conversation and creating that very clever space that I didn't appreciate when I first looked at them. One thing, definitely, though, is then the skill development pathways that come off the back of that, and kind of taking, okay, well, we've learned that you haven't got skill here and you struggled with the openness and the emotional intelligence, so we're going to help build skill and do that over the next 9 months. Becomes part of your kind of your strategy moving forward. And it's been quite interesting, hasn't it, Claudia?
It has, definitely. So we have another slide. And would you like to? There we go. So, and obviously touched there on the skill development pathways. We also have a change coach certification as well. So if you've got change agents to help effectively coach others to really help them through the change, that really is a really great opportunity as well for organizations going through a lot of change. And then the humanizing change for more senior leaders to help communicate more effectively and empower individuals and their organizations to help build more resilient teams to ensure that effective change occurs ultimately and ensures that we've got that motivation throughout. And then we also have a little bit of data around here's just a few of the wonderful brands that we work with across on a global scale and remit, ultimately. This is just a few of some of the major brands that we work with, as well as there's lots of civil service as well that we do a lot of work with too. But we have done a lot of these programs with all these organizations. So, if you are going through a change at the moment and you're really struggling to just also with performance and things like that, then we really want to help and support you to ensure that your organization is reaching its goals ultimately. So
I think that probably closes things up. I've been talking far too much, and I'm getting a virtual kick under the table to move us along. But just on this one, do come and chat to us. There's a million and one ways that we've helped organizations through leadership programs, or future leaders programs are coming back. That's been interesting. Most people are still at virtual, but we've got about 20% of in-person stuff coming back, which is brilliant. But the stuff around change champions, making sure that we're building internal capabilities, train the trainer, is obviously a really important value add, and a way for you to cascade some of this learning. So if you're just thinking, well, I like this topic, I like what you're talking about, but I'm not really sure how this works for us specifically, I'm really happy to just pick up a chat. Claudia and I can have a conversation. We can come and see you. It's great to get out and about. That's why I joined the job, right? That's why we want to come out and see you. So would love to show you the mats and walk you through what some of those sessions are. But I think a lot of you will probably have some of this in place already. It's just maybe about either a 2.0, what else can we do? How can we, or the first bit didn't quite land as well. What can we do next, and what's our next phase? We're really happy to speak to you about that, and of course, no obligation. But I will put the QR code if you did want to book some time. That just goes straight into Claudia and I's diary, so we can come chat to you. But thank you.
Totally.
Well, Claudia, was there anything else from you?
I just wanted to know if anyone had any questions. If they'd like to ask away, feel free to drop some questions into the chat box, and we'll be really happy to answer any sort of general questions. It might be that you're facing an issue through change at the moment, and a lot of people on this masterclass might be experiencing something similar. So feel free to just pop some little questions in if you are curious, and we can kind of do a quick brainstorm on how we can support you right now. So feel free to pop anything in the chat. We've been doing things with organizations around, restructures, how to ensure that people stay engaged throughout these restructures through our psychological flexibility workshops, for example, and ensuring that engagement stays there and that they have peak performance despite all the changes as well coming through. So that's just some examples. Has anyone got any questions? Oh, here we go. Got some coming in. What were the key 5 points? Okay, so firstly we have, bear with me 1 second.
Oh, the psychological flexibility, the 5 key points.
Yes. So we have firstly acceptance. The second is cognitive diffusion, so distancing from thoughts. So distancing from those negative thoughts without letting it kind of define who we are. And then we've got present moment awareness, so focusing on the here and now rather than worrying about what could go wrong or regretting decisions. And then the next is values clarification, and then committed action. I'll pop it in the chat as well, actually. That might be helpful.
Yeah, and this is it's kind of flipping some of the normal change curve stuff and thinking about, okay, how do we accelerate the change curve a little bit? Accepting, we know that that's a key part, because if you don't accept, you don't move into action. It's okay. It's normal. It's human to feel this. As I said, we're at work a third of our life. This is probably affecting my job, my routine. It could even be affecting, let's say you're going back into the office 3 days a week. That's affecting family life. There's loads of things, but accepting that that's a business choice, and what do we do about it? And then learning to distance from those negative thoughts and going, okay, so how let's imagine I'm a friend giving that person advice rather than the person that's emotional in the moment. Let's separate. And then of course you're looking at kind of just bedding down those behaviors, staying solution focused, and focusing on our next move, because our next move might be, well, why don't I have a conversation about how I can better align my strengths? I might be doing a totally different job, or a different restructure. What's the opportunity to play to my strengths more often? Because that's really what I want to do. So that's where it is. But if you want to know more about psychological flexibility, get in touch, and we'll happy to help with the next steps.
We've got a question from Claire here. How can you focus your team on present moment awareness, especially in a team of mixed experience or length of service? Great question. I think ultimately it's about keeping calm and ensuring that I think it kind of leans into the other elements of psychological flexibility. So really aligning with your values and ensuring that you are not too concerned about the future and understanding and making decisions based on your values. That will really help reassure you and help build resilience. But also, I think building on your psychological capital of things that have happened previously, you're talking about length of service, draw upon those individuals who have maybe gone through similar scenarios or similar changes, and maybe get them to sort of coach the rest of the team to think about how they have managed the change previously and what the outcomes have been when they've actually been through that change, to ensure similar changes, to ensure that and reassure people ultimately that actually sometimes change can be for the good and can result in innovation. It can result in more opportunities. It can result in promotions. There are opportunities that come about through change that people can kind of grab hold of and ensure that actually it can be quite a positive thing, and having a bit more of a positive outlook on it rather than just getting into a state of panic. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, brilliant suggestion, and I won't be as direct as say, well, that's what the mats are for, because I won't do that. But I think everything that Claudia's just mentioned is absolutely correct. And maybe another activity that you can think about would be something like sharing your life experiences and the changes that you've gone through. And it doesn't have to be personal if you want to keep it just work focused, but something to do with building that hope and that picture of hope as a collective team, and going, well, we've sort of been here before where we didn't make a decision to be in this position, but we actually made the most of it, and actually what came out of it was really great, and we moved forward. Or it wasn't great, and this is how we managed it. Even that conversation, suffering strategically, is a better way than just being in that state of panic that Claudia you've just mentioned about. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And even drawing on our team flow mats, our team flow conversation mats, it's all about understanding your individual contribution within a change. Yeah. So, as an individual, if you're more experienced, then you can help others through that change, and to ensure more alignment and cohesion within your team so that you're more aligned and you've got ultimately a better team flow. There you go. We've got another question here: how to align values when values are conflicted, and also what's said is not what's the underlying intention. Great question. And what are your thoughts on that one?
I thought you might do that. Yeah, thanks.
I just answered the first one, so it's your turn.
Meg, I think it's a really interesting question, because that's happening so much across organizations right now. The restructures, so you're being told one thing because it's policy, but actually the organization, what's going to be happening, or maybe not. So one of the first things that I would say is that acceptance isn't just accepting what's happening to me and learned helplessness. I'm not in control of anything. I'd be thinking, well, if I was a person who was to put a positive spin on this, what could the other opportunities be for me, and how would I make those possible? What conversations would I have to maybe influence the next steps? If you don't have control, you can always look to influence, and then you can understand your actions. So thinking about how do I more positively look at this from a different angle, and things like ChatGPT are really great thinking partners, but also human beings tend to be pretty good at this as well. So speaking to the people around you and thinking, but be careful, because obviously it could turn into gossip. So maybe framing the question positively in the first instance and go, well, how do we make the most of this? What does this really mean? But when values, strong values, are being what do you call them? They're a bit incongruent to what you're trying to do. You've ultimately got a few actions, right? You can either accept it, find ways to not accept it, or deal with it. And you will find a bit of a mix. But maybe if you're leading a team where there is feeling of incongruency of values, doing a quick values alignment session where you're discussing openly what are the 3 most important values of your life, and just talking about those and creating a bit of openness around it can often diffuse some of that negative intention, the kind of the negativity bias, I should probably say, which might be at play. There's a million and one other ways to answer that question, but Claudia, what do you think?
I would also add that all of our conversation mats enable them enable us to have semi-structured conversations around why the change is happening, and people can have that opportunity to then challenge the values that are maybe being presented to have better communication and coherence. There was one other thing that I was going to say as well, but I've completely forgot. It's completely gone from my brain, but I will probably remember soon. But feel free to follow up as well. I'll be very happy to kind of go through that. Oh, that was it. We also have a workshop on having difficult conversations. So actually, if there are any issues around, leaders having difficulty in delivering bad, negative information, or they're worried about the impact of what the change might have, we have workshops to help facilitate that as well. So, there's lots of things that we can help support on to, especially when values are misaligned, and ensuring that even, we have more coherence and everyone understands what the ultimate goal is. So I hope that answers your question and is helpful. Do we have any more questions? We've still got a few people still hanging around. So if anyone's got any more questions, feel free to pop it into the chat, or feel free to, if you wanted to, just feel free to obviously scan the QR code and we can have a more confidential conversation as well. Oh, final poll. There's a final poll. Yes, we do want the final poll.
Didn't know we had a final poll, Mike.
I think we've already done it. I think it was at the beginning. Oh, no. Here we go. Your people have the skills to manage change. That is the final poll. Yes, we've invested in them. Partially, some do, others don't. Not yet, but we're working on it. No, this is a big gap for us. Or finally, I'm not sure, but I'd love to find out.
It's really interesting. I often get that. Some do, others don't. This comes naturally to other people. Those that don't do it should do it, and they're the ones that need the training, but they don't do it. How do we engage them? It's quite common, right? It's a really interesting one. But what I have noticed though is that even those people who are most begrudging about talking about these things, or it seems fluffy, or we don't have time because operationally we just are at capacity right now, you would be surprised by just even a very simple 90-minute conversation, and you only get halfway through the mat as a semi-structured conversation. Our team have been doing the team flow map 3 times in the last quarter or something, where we keep having to go back because we're in such detailed conversation about alignment and our ability to contribute uniquely. And we're not the only ones. Clients experience this all the time. And even if you're kind of, as I said, out on site, and it's just up on the wall, or while you're on shift, you kind of swap over and add something else to the mat. And then the next shift, come in and add something else to the mat. It doesn't have to be a structured, right, you've got a 3-hour workshop, let's go. There are some really clever ways that clients are kind of making this come to life. So, it's interesting. Partially, some do, others don't. Well, what can we do about it?
Yeah, we've got 88% here.
Yeah.
Well, look, we can help you with building the skills for ensuring that people can manage change through a multitude of ways. So, yes, please reach out if you do need some support, and I'm sure you'll have identified that in maybe some skills analysis or even engagement surveys or things like that. So feel free to reach out and scan that QR code. But I think we can probably wrap it up now. Thank you so much. We've got too much traffic clearly going to the website. Apparently it's down.
It's always a good thing.
We've generated too much interest. It's gone wild. Well, thank you so much all for joining. We really appreciate you taking the time out today to join our masterclass today. So I hope you found it all very useful. If you've got more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us on LinkedIn. My name's Claudia Gasson, and we've got Anthony Fitton over here. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and we will be delighted to support you in any way, shape or form that you require.
Thank you for the interaction today. It really helps us just have a really natural conversation, and we love to speak to you. So please scan the QR code, and look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.